Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimish Radi and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by saying thank you. I feel so blessed with this podcast, the impact it has, the people it reaches, the messages I get on a weekly basis. I started this podcast as a passion project. My intention was really to guide people on their journey, spiritual journey, as well as simplify spirituality. And I love the fact I get messages every week and people find this podcast when they need it most. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Thank you for your support. If you're new, then welcome. Let me know if you have a feedback. Feedback's always a blessing. I am an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. And what I get to do is I get to guide people on their journey. I get to help you understand who you are, release the layers you've been holding on to truly shine your authentic light. I do that through a beautiful mentorship program I channel through the Akashic Records. I take you through a 12-week program, weekly calls, working through your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, really kind of helping you to understand the trauma, release it, and become your authentic self. I love what I get to do. Also through Akashic Records, through this podcast, I really love guiding people on their journey. I really feel like there's so much of an energetic shift, and it's a beautiful time to be doing this type of work. With this podcast, I also get to interview some amazing guests. I'm excited to have a very dear friend, someone I've known for many years, Francesca, with me here on this podcast. Francesca, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Over to you.
Excited to be here. So Francesca Devrient. I'm someone that's been going on my own spiritual journey for a number of years, starting from when I was very young as a child. But in my adult life, morphed more into the corporate world, which is where we originally met. And we interestingly connected more on the spiritual aspect, even though we were working in the corporate world. But super exciting to be here. Really enjoyed following your journey and where you've been going over the last 2 years. Found it super inspiring and looking forward to what's ahead of us today.
Yay, welcome. Yeah, I met Francesca. It feels like in a previous world. Most regular listeners will know that I spent 30 years in the corporate space, and I spent many of my last 17 years I spent in the same company. I don't even know how many of those 17 years I spent working with Francesca. At least 10, I guess. But yeah, it's just
8 in total.
How many?
Yeah, 8 almost.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, it just definitely a different world. But 8 years, and I remember kind of working together in that journey, and we were working together side by side, and I didn't really know how spiritual Francesca was. It was kind of like we worked every day together, right? We were part of the same leadership team, and it was kind of it was nice to have somebody on that spiritual journey who was kind of we were working together. I always love talking about the current energy. I feel like there's so much of a shift happening. I mean, just so everyone knows, we're recording this on Tuesday the 3rd, which is we just experienced the full moon, the eclipse. I really feel like the energy is shifting. I feel like we're shifting from divine masculine to divine feminine. I feel like there's a bigger plan. But I'm curious, what are you finding with this energy? What's your take on energetically and spiritually what's happening on the planet?
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying there's definitely a shift going on. You're right. I definitely feel it. I feel like we're coming to a bit of a crescendo at the moment. You talk to many people. I think last year as a whole was a tough year for many, shedding a lot of things that no longer serve them, learning more about themselves, getting ready to be able to grow and move forward. I think right now, in the last few weeks, I've seen a leading up to a big shift and things gaining momentum and getting clarity in direction of where we should be focused, where we should be going. I'm hearing conversations shift as well. There's energetic shifts in people and in myself too. I'm seeing a lot of signs at the moment as well, which is quite nice and always, I think, reassuring. I'm someone that gets reassured when I see signs, and I see it as a blessing and confirmation I'm on the right path and the right journey. So that's nice. And wow, wasn't the full moon incredible last night? I looked at
I know,
it.
it was beautiful.
I always get hypnotized. I find it fascinating, just the energy that gives off. But I do feel that even in myself over the last few years, I've gone on a bit of a journey of really coming back to who am I and centering myself. And I feel that I'm firmly stepping back into that space now. I think the last few years has been a learning, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and every aspect you could think of. So I'm excited about, how things are changing and morphing and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the universe gives us a lot of clues in terms of, the shifting of moving to the Chinese year from the wood snake and end of eclipse season. I kind of feel like there are a lot of outward signals that things that we're kind of moving from kind of completion to new beginnings. And I mean, I've been talking a lot about the next 12 months, feeling like this planet's going to go through a massive shift, and some of it's going to be painful for the planet, but the more that we can work on ourselves internally and shine our light, the better it is for us. So I'd love to know more about your story. You said that your spiritual space started from a very young age, and then obviously you still merge worlds between spirituality and corporate, which I resonate with a lot because I did that for many years. But anything that's in your heart to share about your journey and your kind of the spiritual part of it and how you merge worlds?
Yeah, I think, gosh, where do I start? So, yeah, this did start when I was very young. I always knew I was slightly different. I used to pick up on energies, I used to see things often. So, growing up at home, I have very early, vivid memories of which I'm sure a lot of children would do, but lying on the floor and staring at the sky for hours and just feeling the connection with the world and the energetics around me. I used to be drawn and fascinated by trees as often as weird as that sounds, but um, I was always someone that wanted to be with nature and wildlife and where I felt most grounded. But then as I grew, and I guess we all go through the horrendous teenage years and those hormonal challenges that come with it. Um, I started to realize that I was different. I was able to pick up on things, on other people's energies. I was able to connect with them in ways and levels that I didn't realize or understand at that time. And then also I was able to see things within, for example, a home I lived in. I would see things there. I would have situations where the water would be turned on in the bathroom while I would be sitting next door, or the television would turn on or off, and a lot of strange things would happen. So at the time, I was very nervous about what did that mean. And I think my reaction was to almost hide from it and run away from it. So again, being at that age, you sort of throw yourself out into the social world and doing things, experimenting of who am I. And I always came back to being comfortable in my own space and around my connection to nature and what served me. I never really was someone that was into the superficial things, I guess, in life. I didn't gravitate towards that. I was also someone that tended to veer away from conventional medicines and things like that. So I always had this strong belief that energetics could do a lot in terms of healing. As a child, I remember very young placing my hands on my animals and believing I could heal them. Which I then, later in life done a lot of healing through my hands and realized that it wasn't something that was just in my head, it was a reality, and I was able to connect on a level that I just didn't understand at that time. And interestingly, as the life shapes you, I think, I ended up going into the conventional world, as we call it, of corporate world, and I struggled with that, right? I struggled with that because it wasn't aligned to my true values of who I was, and I struggled with it because I have, and I pride myself to even to this day that I'm someone that's wanted to live and feel comfortable living and do live authentically. And the conventional world's not actually ready for that a lot of the time. And you clash with a lot of situations. And I think, when we worked together, I think that was one of the things I appreciated the most, was that I could be authentic with you and you could understand where it was coming from. And you weren't intimidated, threatened, or confused by it, whatever term it could be. But yeah, so I ended up going into the corporate world and having to learn to adapt, which was not something that is easy for me in my
Sure.
itself. But yeah, something that I think many people do go through. And then later in life, when I started to have children, I mean, having children is a very humbling experience, right? But also going through the process of actually being pregnant and creating another human being. And what I found amazing was the connection I could have to my child, knowing what sort of person they were and where their challenges were, and actually identifying it with previous lives and energies before.
That's beautiful.
And after having my daughter, who's now 16, but after having my daughter, I I wouldn't call it a breakdown, but I had a moment, like a real moment, where there was an energetic shift inside me, but caused by physical trauma. And there was nothing in the conventional place of world that could heal me. And I struggled massively. And it was at that time when I actually decided to go down the path of homeopathy, and also hands-on healing and crystal bowl healing. And I swear to this day, it's the only thing that got me to where I am, and so much so led me on to study for 3 years to become a homeopath. And of course, for those that know about homeopathy, it's all related around energetics and the energy of the substance that you're using to cure, and curing like with like. That combined with, hands-on healing and cranio, for example, is very powerful. And then combined with crystal ball healing. I mean, I went for hours of counselling sessions. I could talk till the cows come home, but it was pointless. It's just like, and the counselling say to me, well, you're really connected. You know what's going on in your world. Like, yeah, I do. But, this is the superficial level. Why are we having this conversation? This is an energetic, cellular, spiritual level that needs healing.
There's so much more going on.
Yeah. And there had been a shift, I was not properly in my body. I was sitting outside of my body and needed to bring myself back in.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I remember a story about you connecting with your daughter in your womb. I wonder if you could share more about that.
In my womb?
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm not sure which reference you're making, but I think when there's been a few, and so obviously the audience doesn't know this, but my daughter Emily, she's incredible, but she's also very talented in an alternative way herself. So she has unbelievable powers and ability. She's extremely creative as well. But she reminds me of me because she doesn't know how to deal or cope with it yet. And so in this modern day of world, she's been diagnosed with anxiety, ADHD, dyslexia, etc. She finds operating in the conventional world very difficult, very challenging. And I think because of that, she needs a lot of reassurance, but also because she senses things on a level that others don't. I mean, silly, but I'll give you a real example. At my mother's house, she has her neighbours have fitted this machine, which is like a fox deterrent. And what it does is it gives off this really high pitched noise that humans cannot hear it. And literally every time my daughter walks past it, it's deafening for her. She cannot cope with the noise. So she's on a different world. When I studied homeopathy, I didn't realise this when I was pregnant with her, but I now do, that actually when you are pregnant with a child, you do take on the traits of that child. And so the connection I felt and the tie backs I felt to, you know, previous lives, etc., and her fears or her personality and way of being was because it was being portrayed through me. And so actually with my son, I recognized this. So when I was pregnant with my son, actually took remedies for him to help cleanse and release some of the past life trauma and what had happened previously. I wish I'd have known how to do that with my daughter, because I think she would have had a different start in life. But I knew she was going to be early. I knew it from day one. I had quite a troublesome pregnancy with her, so she was actually born 3 months premature. So she had a pretty rough start in life. And I think obviously it all adds to where she is now. But I've had some amazing hands-on healing by one person I go to and have gone to for a few years, and I've been to see her as well. And there's been moments where she's been holding me and literally my daughter is curled up in my room now at this age. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help her heal, and a lot of my journey has been around how can I become stronger, because you have to heal yourself in order to be able to then to heal the lines in the family and heal her. So I'm not sure whether that's what you're referring to, but I guess that's what.
No, I remember you talking about that you had that connection with her in the womb. So it was just so natural and so beautiful. So you and there's an echo, so hopefully that echo goes. But there's you. So you have a beautiful way of actually. Do you mind muting while I'm talking, because there's an echo? Hopefully it goes. So when you going back to the train of thought, I've seen your daughter on social media. She's such a natural, creative being, and I love that. And it's just like when you kind of say that she has all these human traits, it's like that doesn't come through on that creative ability. I mean, she's just such a natural, and she's so powerful with who she is. So she's clearly picked you as a mother to guide her, and so you. I feel like a lot of us will continue to have a foot in both camps. Kind of continue to be in 3D, but also need to be in the 5D and in the kind of spiritual world. So I'm curious what advice you have for people who are going through that journey. How do you thrive in a corporate space but continue to be on the spiritual track? How do you cope with it? What do you do? Any advice you have for people would be great.
I'm not sure I perfected it, to be honest.
Work in progress. We're all work in progress.
It's definitely work in progress. And after something like 20 years in corporate world, I did take a break maybe a couple of years ago. And that was the most refreshing, rewarding thing for me. I mean, we were going through some big challenges personally as a family anyway. Health with my husband, not marital. And during that time, I think it's amazing how when you're in really challenging times and you feel that you have nothing left inside you, that you then are forced to reconnect to what is actually important, what is at your core. And I don't think I would have taken that break from corporate if I hadn't been forced to do it. And I think that's why I say I haven't perfected it, right? Because I was very aware when I was in, years from probably 2019 to maybe a bit later to 2024, that I'd lost my way a bit. And even though I was studying homeopathy at that time, I would have moments where we would have our circles and could do meditation and go into past lives, do wonderful things. It was great when I was in that environment and I'd feel so alive and connected. And then I'd walk out and it's just, I found it almost like I was stuck. Getting away from it was something I just didn't know how to connect to me. And again, I felt a little bit like I'd shifted out of I didn't know quite who I was. So that break that I took from corporate was really something that I was pushed towards for other reasons, which I won't go into here. But I'm very grateful for that because it allowed me to come back to who I am and what is important, and rebalance those priorities in life, and connect to me and be kind to me again, which sounds silly, but I think we tend to, especially as busy mums and as working mums, we tend to struggle with always feeling like we're not quite doing enough in every aspect. So I guess the takeaway I have now is just when a day is busy and I'm going into board meetings and I'm meeting with C-suites or making decisions or priorities for the team or whatever it might be, making difficult decisions about restructures, boring, mundane things that we go through, is just to reconnect to me, my value internals and my core and my heart, and to do it in the best possible way for me. And then that will serve others as best as I possibly can. To do it without ego, which for those in corporate know only too well, many are governed by their ego and make decisions on ego. That comes back to what I said earlier, which is I tend to try and live authentically. So as in what works for me and what is better for the business, myself or others. It doesn't always fly when you're not working for someone else's ego. But it keeps me straight and sane. And then outside of that, I think, I spend a lot of time at home. I still work, particularly with people that have been through a lot of trauma. I worked with someone recently who's been through a really, really tough time, has been on the edge for probably 5 years now. I don't openly treat people, but if I connect and I identify someone needs my help, I will agree to see them. And I spent just 3 hours with him, unexpected, working with him in terms of hands-on healing, distance healing, homeopathy. I did some sound work as well. And he needed to talk. But it was interesting when he was talking, he felt like he needed to talk because that's what he had been doing with therapy sessions previous, but it wasn't actually doing the healing. I created a prayer for him to be saying every morning, every evening, to help him sort of forgive and move on. And those moments are really special for me, especially when you then are contacted by the person. They say that they feel stronger, they feel more grounded, they're able to leave the house now. They're connecting and enjoying when they're going for a walk, whereas previously they felt like they had a void. That for me is super special. And then at home I do, with the family and myself, a lot of healing work. I use homeopathy with all of the family, but also we do a lot in terms of sound healing at home. And that for me is super special. It's interesting, my daughter, she's going through that stage of where she's a little bit fearful. The sound she can tolerate, but if I start talking about the spiritual aspect and the different levels, that she finds a struggle. So, for example, I've helped people that are, end of life situation and helping them pass over and, in terms of finding peace with the family and making it I don't want to say an enjoyable experience, but making it a natural kind of experience for everyone, and so that everybody is at peace and can let go. That's an area that she finds terrifying. So I don't ever go there with her in that. I need to probably make more time on a daily basis to step outside of the madness that we're in the corporate world. I try. That's why I say it's not, I've not perfected it. I try, but I need to do more in that space and connect a bit more with nature. Something for me that's always been very healing is horses. I've, grown up my life being around them. I'm not around them much at the moment. I need to go back and be with them. And again, it's interesting, isn't it? You talk about children that with ADHD or autism and things like that, and they can't communicate. It's the same as the horse, they can't communicate. It's just that level of communication that you have. It's different with the animals. So I need to do more around that.
I mean, you're such a powerful healer, and I'm going to ask you about that in a second. But I also love how you parent. You know, such a conscious parent. You're very aware of, you know, what your kids go through in terms of being in both worlds, right? You know, kind of being in the human realm, but maybe not actually belonging here, right? In many ways. And so, any advice you have for parents who are struggling with that in terms of, you know, kind of how to make sure that they limit the programming for the kids, you know, in terms of, I really feel like, you know, the kids are like the next generation. We took on a lot of ancestral personal karma to allow the next generation to really focus on building whatever we're here to build. For any advice you have for parents in terms of being a conscious parent and allowing your kids to just be who they're meant to be?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that both from maybe first from a more generic perspective, because everyone's journey is different, every child's different. But I think one thing that's important for me nowadays is to allow children to challenge. Because to your point, you know, we are all being fed a narrative, whatever narrative that is that you're gravitating towards. Everybody has a different one. We create our reality, right? But allowing children to challenge allows them to always question, be open to learning and being open-minded. I think the last few years, and even continuing to today, if we are going to set our children up for success, we need to give them the freedom and the ability to do that, and to own their own destiny and their own future, and not have it dictated to them in a way that the world or whomever would like it to be. So that for me is a big one. Now, we need to parent as well, right? So yeah, of course, discipline needs to come into effect. You need to choose your boundaries and all of that aspect. I get it. But for me, I think with my daughter in particular, as I say, she's very susceptible to things, and my husband's much more conventional than me, although he's open-minded. He struggles massively with her. So a lot of the things that she says she's feeling, seeing, experiencing, hearing, all of that, he doesn't understand it, comprehend it, and he thinks, oh, it's in her head. Now, I think because I have personally been through it myself, I can identify and connect to it. What she's saying is not in her head. And it's finding that balance of allowing her the space to vocalize it and experience it without fearing it. And I think this is the biggest challenge for me with her is don't fear what you have. Don't fear your strengths and your talents and your abilities. And I'd say that to anyone. We all have huge strength and ability to change the environment we're in, change and influence the world, do better, live in our authentic selves, to, you know, to connect, to things, to heal ourselves, to heal others. I mean, we genuinely all have that ability, but we have been suppressed so long and taught that you need to be a certain way, and to fear anything that's outside of that, it's damaged our ability to connect to it. And so I guess my priority right now with my daughter is to allow her to understand what it is and learn, but to try and hold her hand walking through it, because she does feel fearful of it, and that's because she's experiencing some of the strength of the energy that she has. With my son, he's the opposite. And when my daughter was younger, I used to actually challenge her, because she used to like to follow rules and do everything, wanted to please everybody. And I was the strange mother that was like, don't follow rules. Why are you doing this? Okay? Because she was so conformative. Well, I thought she was so conformative. Multiply that by 20, you got my son, right? So he's now growing up, and he's this kid that He wants to please everybody and do the right thing and follow the rules. And he's like a typical old-fashioned factory worker. He'll be happy if he's just stamping, the time clock's coming in. He's like a robot. He just wants a job. Of course, as a boy is slightly different. I get it. For me, with him, and actually with him, he has a very old soul. He is a healer. My daughter, I haven't said this, she is someone who is a clairvoyant. She can see the future. She can see things. She also has healing ability, but the clairvoyancy is her strength. My son is an old soul, and he is a healer. And the challenge I have with him is trying to take him on the path of not wanting to just please everybody else and follow the rules and do everything, but actually learn who he is and come into his own path and power, so it's not dictated by others. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, right? Because he's also very young, and I need to see what he morphs into and where he goes. He has less of the creative genes, more conventional sort of academic side sits in him. But it's a difficult balance, I think, for parents, especially with iPhones and social media and things like that. And something I did learn very early on with my daughter, and I somehow managed to nail it with her so that she recognizes it too, is that certain graphics that she's exposed to switch her brain and change her. So she becomes angry and even more fearful and just disconnected, and turns into this a bit of a beast that's like, who is this? We recognized this really early on, and actually it was Roblox that was the one. So she can see if she's looking at something on television or on social media or YouTube or whatever it might be, she now recognizes the pixelation that sends her that way and can turn it off. And that, for me, is super important, to be able to teach our kids to use social media and technology, yes, but also know when you need to step away from it. And she's now gets to the stage where she's like, okay, I need to come off, and she takes a break every now. Now, she doesn't always have that balance right, because as you've seen Emma, she loves a bit of social media. She's on there, she's performing, but also that's her escapism, because she's doing it to a screen and not around others, and not having to absorb their energies while she's doing it.
I mean, I love it. It's just like she's so natural. Yeah. And I've always said to you, I feel like your kids are here to change the world. So I love how conscious you are with them. So, actually, do you mind going on mute again? So I just want to talk about our connection and kind of how that was. So I remember when you joined, we connected really well, right? You kind of understood me, and you kind of had this beautiful ability to kind of work together, to take our visions, and kind of, we changed the way the organization kind of, we were both in sales operations, and we kind of created together with the leadership team that we had there, we created a way of working that actually was then tried to be replicated in each of the years. And we just had that connection, and I just thought, wow, okay, somebody that gets me, right? I didn't really think of much of the spiritual side, and kind of almost something I was doing on the side, right? I wouldn't talk about it too much. And then I remember we were at a leadership dinner, right? It was I think it was my leadership team, and we invited some of the C-level execs to kind of join us from a European perspective. And I remember just sitting next to you at dinner, and we just kind of got into it. It's almost like we're in a little bubble. Everyone else was around us. And somehow we got into a conversation about you being able to see energies. And I still remember that conversation. It kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, hold on. I work with this person every day. We used to meet in person, because this was before, kind of as much working from home. And I was like, one, it made me realize that the universe kind of always supports us with the right people. And I remember that dinner. I remember, from that point, that kind of solidified a friendship as well as a working relationship. It was there anyway, but for me, it was great to have somebody that that could relate to what I was going through on the spiritual side. And at that point, did I know I was going to leave corporate to focus on this? Probably not. And you kind of supported me through that decision too. So, but yeah, I'd love for you to share. What was that like for you? Kind of, as you said, knowing that there was somebody that was supporting you that side. But yeah, how was that conversation for you? I'd love for you to share because I remember it well.
Yeah, I mean, things happen in the strangest of places, right? I think we already had a good working relationship before that dinner. I already felt like a connection to you for sure. But I hadn't fully taken my other world into the business space, and I don't even remember how it came up. I think you maybe brought something up, and I think you were quite early in the journey at that stage where what you are now. But I do remember a sense of relief, maybe, of actually like someone that you can talk about this with that doesn't think it's crazy, right? And who is genuinely interested and can identify with what I'm talking about. So it was really, I guess it was almost like therapeutic. It was nice to be able to connect with you on a different level. And I think after that, we then had a meeting in the office, maybe a few days or a week later. And I think you said something to me around, okay, so tell me, what do you sense about me right now in physical sense? And I was like, well, I'm sure maybe we should do this in the office. And you're like, yeah. And then we started talking about that in terms of what I was experiencing that you were going through. Yeah, and that was the start. That was the start of this, right? It was a great connection moment, and really super important. And I think it's, I guess, from my perspective, I don't quite know how to position this, but from my perspective, like culturally, I've always been fascinated about the Indian culture, and I've got a bit of a weird sort of mongrel background, so I've got a bit of Burmese in me. And Italian, bit of English, bit of whatever. But I think because of that, I've got a bit of the Burmese side is very different to the Italian side, right? What's the expression? I think it is that the Westerners do and the Eastern be, something like that is the expression. And I've got a lot of friends who are Indian, past relationships with Indians as well. I've always been really fascinated by the natural connection in the family that you have to that spiritual realm. And even if it's not on this level, like with the Akasha records and stuff that you're talking about, but even, in other aspects of the way of bringing the children up, and it's always present in the home, and I've always found that fascinating and always wanted to kind of learn a bit more about it and be part of that experience a bit more. And so I think us having that connection on that day was super exciting for me, and it gave me permission almost to say, I can be myself here, and this is okay, and we're going to find this journey together, and it may be here, it may be somewhere else, and look, we're here, 10 years later, having a conversation on your podcast. It just goes to show that, it was one of those sliding door moments, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly helped me in kind of being in that space. Just and you talk about Hinduism, and I mean, it helped me a lot. Reincarnation and kind of karma, and it was kind of natural then to talk about soul contracts and talk about this journey and talk about family, right, and the connection that we have, right, and it was. But you definitely made a big impact in kind of helping me to be in the corporate space and whatever that felt like, right? And obviously it came to a point where I left the corporate space. But I've always said to you that you're such an amazing healer, and it's like when are you going to share that with the world? And I remember talking to you about being on this podcast, and this is your first kind of live spiritual conversation in this way. So thank you for doing that. But I'd love for you to share how do you be in both worlds? How do you, because you do really well at it, right? You've got a very successful corporate space, and you kind of but I'm curious, how do you do that on a day-to-day basis? What does that feel like?
Yeah, I think it's interesting your reference to, and you have said this to me so many times, which is, when are you going to do more with your, healing, spiritual side? When are you going to step into the space? And I think one thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is it's my space. And so having over the years thought maybe this is something I take on and leave corporate, similar to what you've done, right? And actually go down this route more. As I'm getting older, am becoming more sort of protective in terms of, this is my space that I want to nurture. And because of my ability to pick up energies, and that includes on every spectrum, right? I have to spend a lot of my time clearing, and to be around people on a regular basis. I mean, I used to have a monthly clinic for homeopathy, and it was great from the perspective of helping heal people and see what would come through. But when you're always on like that, it wasn't right for my soul, myself. So for me, I've recognized that this area of healing and this area of energetics is very much mine, with the luxury of being able to help and choose who I help, and step into the space of maybe, the areas where I want to go full steam and really want to, wrap my arms and wrap the protection and help someone in the situation, family, heal and take them through, and not spread myself thin. And so that's how I'm trying to divide my world, is that, yes, I do the corporate aspect, not going to necessarily do that forever, but this sacred space is a sacred space for me of healing, energetics, connecting to other worlds, etc. And healing others is something I will do, but not on a mass basis. It's something I want to do and choose who I work with, and they choose me as well, ultimately. So you won't see me pushing and advertising to come and work with me, but if our paths cross and the connection's right, then absolutely I'll step in. And I think that way means that I can give more and heal more and be better at it, because I'm stronger and healthier in myself and more connected in myself.
I love that. I mean, it's such a conscious choice. You're I remember the way I survived in the corporate world for so long when doing the healing work was, I saw it as a way of funding my dreams. I saw it as a way of doing what I wanted to do. And, I guess in my journey, it got to a point where I just couldn't do the annual planning cycles. That was the thing that really pushed me over the edge. It was like, oh my God, are we talking about the same numbers again? And, numbers that we're not going to be able to achieve. And I was like, oh, and I couldn't face it. And I remember talking to our manager, just like, I think I'm done. And she was like, when I met you, I'd only known you a year and a half. And she was like, I knew you were here for something so much bigger. I'm so proud of you. And I was like, wait, what? You've only, it's like, she didn't even strike me as somebody as spiritual. And, I guess we all are in some kind of way, but it was just like, okay, that was a universal confirmation. I love it. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the corporate world and the energy of the corporate world. I kind of feel like, as we shift from the divine masculine to divine feminine, a lot of the individual egos within corporate will start to come crashing down, and things are going to change within corporate. I still feel that a lot of larger organizations may not be ready to change, but what I'm seeing is a lot of individuals within those organizations are starting to reach out. Most of my clients still come from corporate, but I'm seeing that shift where more and more people are not going to sell anymore. They're going to the challenging kind of the status quo, they're challenging themselves, and I do see that within corporate. I do see there's a definite shift. I'm curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think I talked earlier about the corporate world and people tending to work, and operate and make decisions on their ego. I mean, as the corporate world as a whole, I'm seeing a massive shift anyway. The big organizations and legacy businesses are not the future. It's so much. I mean, how many smaller businesses have been created in the last 5-10 years that have just overtaken some of these big giants? And they're really lean in terms of structure and who's there. And I am seeing a different mindset in those businesses. Those businesses, the individuals that are leading them, the people that are involved in actually making them a success, they think differently. It's not so much about ego. It's not about hierarchy. It's around making decisions in a different way. It's about moving much quicker. It's about learning. It's about experimenting. It's about making mistakes. It's about taking the team with you. It's about communicating. It's about connection. And it's ironic to say that in a time when we're all about AI and getting rid of people, what have you. Well, from my view, two things will always stand true is connection. We make our businesses for people. Our businesses are run by people, and our customers are people. There's a connection. Any way you look at it, you can replace everything with AI. There still needs to be a human element. And the other aspect is creativity. And I think, with AI coming through, the true creatives are the ones that are really standing out right now. And I don't want this to be about my daughter again, but, that's what I look at her and I worry sometimes in this world because it's so harsh and where it's going. But I'm like, no, actually, she is the future, right? She's a crystal child. So she's a healer, but she's going to do it in her own different way. So, yeah, I think there is a shift. I don't think we're necessarily seeing the full shift yet. I think there's a long way to go. But I also think, some of the things that are happening in the world around us is causing people to pause and reconsider. And that for me is the biggest shift I've seen. And that is then promoting or pushing people to reconnect to who they are and to their human selves. And, in our situation, yes, the spiritual level too. And that's exciting. So I think the more that happens, the bigger the wave will become. And the more we'll start to heal each other and yeah, the busier you'll get, Nilesh.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, it's such a. I do see the bigger organizations and the kind of the individual egos that have driven them. I don't want to get into the kind of the Epstein files and all that, but I just feel like a lot of people will get found out. And you're right. The more conscious organizations. It's just an interesting time for the planet. And like I said earlier, I feel like the kids are going to change. They're going to bring a different paradigm, and they're going to bring a different. And I see that in your daughter. I watch her, and she's such a. I don't know. Maybe people understand this. She's such a non-human. There's that creative element of it in her, which she's so natural. It's so beautiful. It's just and I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on kids. In terms of, as you're saying, social media and expectations and all this kind of school, college, and the expectations. Just so I applaud you for being that conscious parent and giving them the space to be authentic and be their natural selves. So as we kind of coming to close out this episode, I just want to give you the opportunity to share anything that's in your heart, anything that feel that you want to maybe channeled, anything you want to share as we close out this episode. And obviously, you've already said that you're not, you're not. The healing is something you do on the side. So if anybody wants to reach out, how would that look like? But yeah, anything you want to share that's in your heart before we close, over to you.
Yeah, I think I guess something I would share now is that we've touched on it at a very high level. I've mentioned it, which is what's going on in the world right now. There's so much. And it's very easy to go down that route of fear. It's very easy to get sucked into it. And this comes back to the conversation we were having a while ago around, with our children and allowing them to challenge things and think for themselves and differently and create their own reality. I think it's so important right now that we all protect our own reality and we don't get sucked into that fear. Because if we give weight and strength to that fear in whatever capacity it will be, it will just grow. And at the end of the day, love is what's important. That is what heals. That is what drives strength. That is what brings us together. And that is where we need to be focused. And so I guess it's easy in the day-to-day to watch the news and get sucked into things, and even podcasts or Instagram posts, whatever they might be. And, half the stuff we see now is AI anyway, that's not actually true. Just remember to question it. Is this actually true, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing? You don't know. But what you do know is what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what you're touching, what you're looking at, and how you are showing up. And just so spend some time back with yourself and the authentic you and family and nature and what's important around you, and be kind and forgiving and gentle with the process, because it does take time and it's easy to slip into it. But I see a lot of people getting drawn into that fear space, and sometimes it just takes you to tap on the shoulder or give them put an arm around them and just help re-steer them and recognize that actually it's not the reality. So I think that's the biggest thing. And yeah, in terms of working with me and reaching out to me, and if you feel that there's a connection, I'm always happy to have a conversation. I am on Instagram. I am on Instagram as the Berkshire Girl. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So, yes, I'm always happy to have a conversation. If it's something I can't help with personally, I know some amazing healers as well. But I'm always interested to grow my network and connect with people and share experiences. So, yeah, always happy to have a conversation.
I love it.
Last off, I guess. If we are closing now, I guess I want to say a massive thank you to you for inviting me on, not really knowing what I'm coming into, and my first proper podcast. It's quite an experience, and it's great to do it with you in a safe space.
Oh, I knew that we were going to have a great conversation. I didn't doubt it in any way. I've been just so everyone knows, I've been talking about Francesca for a couple of years about coming on. I just, she's such a powerful light, and I'm so grateful for you to be on this podcast. I was grateful for you to share the corporate space too, in terms of, it's really interesting since I've left that the weirdest people that have come through that actually are interested in what I'm doing. It's a fascinating time. So I love. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for shining your light, and wise words. I couldn't agree more. It's that whatever you're hearing, whatever you're seeing, if you can trust your intuition, if you can listen to what your heart is telling you, and your intuition is always quieter, it's always gentler. Your ego is always louder, and connect to your truth. So I couldn't agree more. I love the way. That's a beautiful way to end. Sending so much love and light out to you, Francesca, and everybody that's listening. Be kind, be gentle. We'll be back soon. Bye for now.
Bye.